But I just
Got
want to
it.
ask, now that you said that, what was the hardest thing you covered in your interview with your cousin and the hardest thing you covered in the interview on Sober Saturdays?
Well, on sober Saturdays, one of the hardest things was just talking about it in general. Talking about alcoholism and how it like kind of ruined our lives, and talking about my splitting up with my wife and like how all that happened, and then it's just some sharing some embarrassing stories. I haven't even shared like all of them, just a couple of them, which are kind of like sound fun and exciting, but like kind of dangerous and stupid at the time. I mean, at this point, it kind of is what it is. But we all talk about stuff on Sober Saturdays about what we've done naked. You know what I mean? Like interesting stuff like that. And then for the meat, like my cousin interviewing about not eating meat. I've been so used to it my whole life of not eating meat, so it's kind of not really that difficult. But now more than I was prior, over the past couple of years of being vegan, I'm a lot more open about it because it's become more common nowadays. So just being open in general. When I was younger, I kept it to myself because I was kind of embarrassed about it because I couldn't handle the kind of questions. It's like, what do you mean you don't eat meat, or getting criticized for not eating meat? Now it's like kind of a sense of pride, and like I've taken that on and kind of shown what I can do physically while not eating meat or never having eaten meat before, and showing that anything's kind of possible on a plant-based diet, to myself, proving it to myself and kind of showing that to others as well.
Okay, that's good because I'm going to ask you about the hard things and the embarrassing things later. So just for the people that don't know you, I'm I want you to give the 2-minute version of like how someone could grow up not eating meat. Like what was it about your parents that, because everybody I know that doesn't eat meat, they switched to eating meat when they were old enough, or
Uh-huh.
when they'd go over to a friend's house, or when they became teenagers. Like eventually they wanted to at least know what it was like, or they have their couple of years. I did it. My mom raised me on like the 70s hippies diet with sprouts, and everybody else had bologna, and I wanted the bologna. So I had a very long rebellious phase where I was eating steak and all this stuff. And, I came back to it. Everybody comes back to it when they know better. But tell me a little bit about that upbringing, how you never deviated from that.
So our upbringing as kids, we were raised vegan, and my dad had a very strict vegan diet. Like he didn't even like, even if there was a vegan option somewhere, if they cooked it in or around something that was in contact with meat or close to it, he wouldn't let us have it. He was also very strict about artificial colorings and flavorings, and he was pretty much all natural as much as you could, no artificial colors, red dyes, all that stuff. He was very strict, and at the time it kind of built a discipline around it, but it did make us curious as kids, like because there wasn't a lot of explanation as to why we were vegan or why. And he was very kind of dark about it, like it's evil if you eat meat, or it's evil, and like that was kind of like it, kind of like scare tactic almost. And I don't think that really was the best way for it. Like with my kids, they're vegetarian and as much as vegan as possible, but it's kind of more of like educating them and making it not feel wrong. But technically it kind of is, but just not letting them be fearful of what it is, because then you do become rebellious, like you said. So when my parents split up in like my younger ages, I think I was like 8 or 9 or whatever the case was, we did want to try animal products because they were everywhere around us. And at one point we did say, hey, can we try a slice of that cheese pizza? And then it was all downhill from there. But it was more of a curiosity thing to it, not necessarily like a peer pressure, because I grew up with that a lot. And everyone's like, hey, eat this cheese, eat this meat, eat this, eat that. And I was just like, I don't really want to, because subconsciously, like as a kid, I knew that it was not right. I felt guilty about it, and I felt wrong about, like, I just didn't, in my heart, it didn't feel necessary to eat meat. because I had done it for so long. So I'm like, well, why now? And I was like, what's the harm in cheese? Not knowing the, extensive um, behind the scenes of the dairy industry that I do now, kind of know now. But as a kid, it's like, oh, it's just milk, whatever. It's just cheese. It is what it is. And then I just tried it and kind of dabbled with that. But for some reason, like I've never had a desire to eat meat. And I don't know if it's because it was so ingrained in me at a young age, but I mean, a part of me just feels wrong and it feels unnecessary. And the more I become like educated about protein and amino acids and getting your calcium and your fiber and like all this stuff that all the sources that you can, and then you think about it, and the animals that are the oldest, the strongest, and the largest, a turtle, a gorilla, or an elephant are all plant based. So I kind of just look at it that way, opposed to the other end of it. And yeah, I just haven't felt the need to ever try it. And my younger brothers, one of them went full, meat eater, and then the other has tried like seafood, lobster. I think he tried crab, and he's just like, man, it's just not for us.
Mhm.
And we've
Yeah,
survived over 30 years.
yeah. And I wasn't raised vegan too. And I think I agree with you that like the fear tactics is probably not ideal. Obviously, it didn't work on your two brothers or your siblings. But I wasn't raised vegan or vegetarian. It just kind of was the food that she had. And so I think without the education, you can rebel and go to
Mhm.
whatever because you don't understand why you're not eating. Because she was never an ethical vegan. She's still not.
Yeah.
She was just a hippie. Um, and I'm an ethical vegan, so I would never consider meat now. But it
Mhm.
was just that's I think one of the differences. And I agree with the way you raised your daughters because the rebellious part is the worst part. Like,
Especially girls, they'll want to rebel against their dad as much as possible in the future. And my oldest, Thea, she always asks when we're going to go back to the village for their bean, cheese, and rice burrito and some raw cheesecake. And it's like, I didn't force that. I didn't say you have to eat this burrito. Like, it's wrong. You're a bad person if you don't eat this burrito. You're bad if you don't. Like, that was the tactic that I was raised on, and it was like kind of like pinned us against other family members and other friends. Like, we're like, oh, we can't be friends with you because you eat meat. Like, that kind of tactic doesn't really work. And eventually you kind of, if you do it for the right reasons, you kind of end up finding yourself surrounded with more vegans and other people that are kind of in that community without, exiling everybody else for their choices, because a lot of it is just lack of education. It's such a generational um, trait that's been passed down from years to years to years, and some of us are just at a pivotal point where we're kind of wanting to change those ways, especially if they don't feel right to our hearts or our bodies.
yeah, I agree too. And I don't care. I know some vegans like don't even want to be around people that eat meat because
Yeah.
to them they're murderers. And
Yeah.
if someone murdered a baby, why would you hang out with a murderer? So
Yeah.
I understand everybody's coming from a different place. My personal view is a little more evolved just because I understand that everybody has their own path in this life. They have different past experiences and reasons for what they do and why, and they're doing the best that they know how. So for me, that I'm okay. I don't want to like go to a turkey Thanksgiving thing where they're celebrating the death. Like I don't
Yeah.
do that anymore, but we all have to find where we want to fit in and have those boundaries for ourselves.
Yeah.
But I had a question, if your dad, why he became vegan, why he was so strict, and was your mom 100% like that? And
Uh,
who did you get raised by when they got divorced?
so my dad, when he was about like, he grew up with kind of a Hispanic family, right? So like my grandpa used to do like menudo and like they would put the bones in everything, and they would literally like try to use every bit of possible of the animal, and like tortillas and beans with lard in them, and like that was the life he grew up on. I don't think it was necessarily like heavily processed stuff. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he was around like 18 years old. And one day he just like I don't know if he made the connection or something, but he was just like, I'm done with this. Like, I'm going to go vegan. And he went vegan at 18, and now he's, in his mid 60s and has been vegan this whole time. Um, and
What made him make that switch?
I don't know, honestly. He just kind of said his idol, I guess, back in the day was the Beatles. They were on this vegetarian vegan kick back in the day, and he like saw them doing, was like, all right, I guess I'm going to do this. And then he just went full board into it. And there was a lot of conflict with him and his family because they didn't understand it at all, like coming from a heavily like animal based family, that they just kind of, I don't know if they shunned him out, but they just kind of didn't understand. His brothers didn't understand. His middle brother was like a huge barbecue smoker and like all about meat, meat, meat. And then same with his younger brother. But like he just had that switch, and sometimes it comes unexpected, like for a lot of people. Like even for me, when I went back to vegan, like I just started seeing things and I was like, you know what, like I'm feeling better. I had started a health food journey, and I think that's where he was at. He was trying to be healthier and wanted to be more active, and he was in the construction industry, and I don't know, it just kind of clicked and he stuck with it. But yeah, he was very strict on it. Like when him and my mom were dating, like he wouldn't like he didn't allow her to eat animal based products because she wasn't, and she came from the same kind of thing, like a Hispanic background of lard in this and menudo that and meat in here and chicken broth in the rice. And like it's like you don't need chicken broth, like you can use regular vegetable broth. But those are the kind of things that are just taught over the years, and that's just all people know. So for her, she didn't know any different, and she just fell into that. But she wasn't 100% committed in it. Like I know she would sneak it, have an ice cream sandwich here and there, like with her girlfriends. But yeah, like it was completely frowned upon by my dad. He didn't allow it. He didn't allow meat anywhere near the house. In the house, he wouldn't. Any family get-togethers, um, we would have to be outside when they cooked meat inside the house. We'd go sit outside, or using even the same like cooking pans or silverware or dishes. It was like it was wild as a kid growing up that way. But yeah, he just stuck with it, and yeah, to this day he's still vegan and he's healthy as ever. He races dirt bikes and he's in his mid 60s.
So
So
he's healed things and he's healthy being vegan this long.
yeah,
He knows how to do it right.
he's healthy. Yeah, he definitely is. He's on Purium now. So
Mm.
that helps incorporate that protein, because part of him is now he's in that older age. He's starting to realize that his muscle is starting to deteriorate a little bit, as it naturally is, not just for vegans. It happens once you get into your older ages, that your body starts naturally deteriorating muscles. And that's why people in their 70s, if they're not healthy and fit going into that, they have no muscle definition. They can't pick themselves up off the floor. They can barely get off the couch. So for him, he's physically active and he's still working construction in his mid 60s, but he needed to add in more protein besides beans, rice, nuts, all that stuff. So yeah, I got him on Purium. But yeah,
Okay.
I was going to ask about my mom, or talk about her a little bit. And she stayed vegetarian, surprisingly, because she had that connection with the animals. And she's like, I don't feel the need to go back to eating meat, because when she was with my dad, she didn't. She just kind of felt that she needed, cheese and eggs and stuff like that in her diet. And she was on that diet. She was kind of pescatarian. So she did eat fish every once in a while, like a fish taco or even shark, but it was very, very rare, like maybe a couple times a year. And then her and my stepdad, because my stepdad was a meat eater when they got together. And so she did some cooking. She did majority of the cooking. So a lot of he was eating vegetarian diet, but he would eat meat every time he had the chance outside of the household, or sometimes cook burgers himself and make his own dinner or whatever. Up until about the time I went vegan again 3 years ago, my mom and stepdad both decided to go plant-based vegan like shortly after, maybe about a year afterwards. And they saw the Game Changers and they watched a couple other documentaries on Netflix. And they're just like, well, we don't like, in comparison with the health and fitness of those athletes that they compared, my stepdad was like, well, I'm in my like getting close to 50 or in his 50s at this point. And he's like, I need to start making some decisions to change my life if I want to live a healthy, lifestyle the last couple of years of my life. And he got a little bit more physical active, and he's all about the vegan foods and all the vegan pop-ups that we go to and stuff like that. And it's just amazing that he's like, man, there's some good vegan food. Like even they're in Mexico right now, and he's like, this is the best Mexican like vegan food I've had in Mexico. And
Mm.
as I was saying before, is the Mexican culture for so long was meat and everything. And now they're starting to change their culture and cater to, vegans and have these delicious options. And he's like, what the heck? Like, where has this been all my life kind of thing? And it was tempeh and black beans blended
Mm.
together. And it's like that tempeh is one of the highest protein sources for a vegan, blended with black beans and spices, and boom, you got yourself a high protein vegan taco burrito or whatever. And it's Mexican style with no chicken broth, no stomach lining, no hooves from pigs. Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of awesome. So I'm happy that they went that direction as well. Oh no.